In the 1800s, slavery in the United States was a brutal system that dehumanized millions, but enslaved black women faced a uniquely horrific form of oppression. Beyond the grueling labor in fields or homes, they endured systemic sexual violence, forced reproduction, and a complete lack of legal protection. Their bodies were exploited for profit and power, with no recourse against the atrocities they suffered. The story of enslaved black women reveals a dark chapter of history, marked by unimaginable pain, yet also by their resilience against a system designed to break them. By exploring their experiences in cases like that of Celia in 1855, we uncover the harsh realities of their lives and the laws that enabled their abuse. Enslaved black women lived under a system that stripped them of all autonomy. From birth, they were considered property, not people. By 1850, the United States Census recorded over 3.2 million enslaved African Americans, with women comprising nearly half. They toiled in cotton fields, harvested tobacco, or worked as domestic servants in plantation homes. But their exploitation extended far beyond physical labor. White enslavers viewed black women's bodies as tools for economic gain, not only through work, but also through sexual exploitation and forced reproduction. The domestic slave trade, thriving in the 1800s, depended on enslaved women to produce more slaves for sale. A healthy enslaved child could fetch $400 in the 1850s, equivalent to over $12,000 today, creating a perverse incentive for enslavers to maximize reproduction through coercion or violence. Sexual violence was a constant threat for enslaved black women, embedded in the very structure of slavery. Enslavers, overseers, and other white men wielded absolute power, exploiting women with no fear of consequences. Slave narratives, collected in the 1930s by the Works Progress Administration, reveal countless stories of women subjected to rape and sexual coercion. These acts were not just personal violations, but strategic tools to maintain control and increase wealth. Resistance often led to brutal punishment, while compliance offered no escape from dehumanization. The legal system provided no protection. Enslaved women were chattel, with no right to refuse or seek justice. Court records from the era show that rape of an enslaved woman was rarely prosecuted, and if it was treated as a property offense against her enslaver, not a crime against her. Forced reproduction was a deliberate strategy to fuel the slave economy. Enslaved women were valued for their ability to bear children, who would be born into slavery and sold for profit. Historians like Deborah Gray White note that some plantations kept records of women's reproductive output, treating them as breeding stock. A fertile woman could be worth $1,000 or more, surpassing the value of many male laborers. Pregnancy brought no relief from work. Women labored in fields until late in their pregnancies, often undernourished, leading to high infant mortality. The pain of motherhood was compounded by the knowledge that their children would face the same bondage and abuse. By the 1850s, an estimated 80,000 slaves were sold annually in the domestic trade, tearing families apart and deepening the trauma of forced reproduction. The legal system offered no recourse for enslaved black women, reinforcing their vulnerability. Laws like the 1662 Virginia Statute declared that a child's status followed the mother, ensuring that children born of enslaved women remained enslaved, even if the father was white. This incentivized sexual violence, as any child born from such assaults added to the enslaver's wealth. Courts dismissed crimes against enslaved women, and those who spoke out faced severe consequences, including beatings or sale. Harriet Jacobs, in her 1861 narrative, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, described the constant threat of sexual harassment and her desperate efforts to protect herself, highlighting the impossibility of seeking justice. Her story, like many others, reveals the pervasive fear that defined enslaved women's lives. Celia's case in 1855 is a tragic example of the horrors faced by enslaved black women and the legal system's failure to protect them. Purchased at age 14 by Robert Newsom, a 60-year-old Missouri widower, Celia endured 5 years of repeated rape, bearing 2 children, one likely Newsom's. Living in a small cabin on his property, she had no escape from his abuse. In June 1855, at age 19, Celia confronted Newsom, demanding he stop. When he attacked her again, she defended herself, striking him with a stick and unintentionally killing him. She burned his body in her fireplace, but the crime was discovered. Celia's trial in Callaway County exposed the brutal reality of her life and the legal system's indifference to her suffering. At Celia's trial, her lawyers argued that she had the right to defend herself against rape, citing Missouri's law against taking any woman against her will. This defense was groundbreaking, suggesting an enslaved woman could have the same protections as a free white woman. However, the judge and jury rejected this, reflecting the era's belief that enslaved women had no bodily autonomy. The prosecution framed Celia's act as a crime against her owner's property rights, ignoring the rape. Court records show the judge instructed the jury to disregard the assault, stating that Celia, as a slave, had no right to refuse Newsom. On October 10, 1855, she was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. Despite appeals, Celia was hanged on December 21, 1855, while 6 months pregnant with a stillborn child. Her story, preserved in Missouri court records, underscores the legal system's complicity in enslaved women's oppression. Celia's case reflects the broader experiences of countless enslaved black women. Sexual violence was a near-universal threat, though underreported due to societal dismissal. Narratives from women like Harriet Jacobs and Sojourner Truth reveal similar patterns of abuse and resistance. Jacobs hid for 7 years to escape her enslaver's advances, while Truth, born enslaved in New York, spoke out against the exploitation she witnessed. These women's stories, though rare in their documentation, show the courage it took to survive a system that offered no justice. Their voices, often silenced in their time, are now vital to understanding slavery's full scope. Enslaved black women also faced psychological and social humiliation. Enslavers' wives, resentful of their husbands' assaults, sometimes punished the victims, whipping or selling them for seducing their husbands. White society perpetuated racist stereotypes, portraying black women as inherently immoral to justify their exploitation. These prejudices were codified in laws and practices, ensuring that enslaved women's suffering remained invisible. The economic motives behind their exploitation were undeniable. By 1860, the enslaved population neared 4 million, with children born to enslaved mothers fueling the domestic slave trade. Plantations in states like Virginia became breeding grounds, where women were pressured to produce children for sale, often separated from their families at auctions. Despite the risks, enslaved black women resisted in countless ways. Some, like Celia, fought back physically, though it cost them their lives. Others used subtle acts, such as feigning illness or passing down stories of survival. Harriet Jacobs documented her experiences, exposing slavery's brutality, while Sojourner Truth became an abolitionist speaker, advocating for black and women's rights. These acts of defiance challenged a system that sought to dehumanize them, though they often came at a steep price. Celia's execution and the punishments faced by others who resisted highlight the dangers of standing up to their oppressors. The legacy of enslaved black women's suffering is a painful but essential part of history. Their experiences reveal the intersection of racism, sexism, and economic greed that defined slavery. Celia's case sparked debates in Missouri about enslaved women's rights, planting seeds for change. The 1865 abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment marked a turning point, but its scars lingered in systemic inequalities. Historians like Stephanie Jones Rogers argue that the exploitation of black women was central to slavery's economy, a truth often overlooked. By sharing these stories, we honor their resilience and acknowledge the injustices they faced. Their voices, once silenced, now echo through history, urging us to confront the past and work toward a more just future.